Albert Einstein once said, "If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid." What was your moment when someone judged you like that? Not me, but my brother, when he was in elementary school. When grades are based on things other than test scores, the teacher noted on his report card that he needs to work on his skill at cutting with scissors. My brother is left-handed, and the scissors in the classroom were for right-handed people. I needed a performance art class for my degree. I took drawing. I made many mistakes and etiquette errors. Did you know you're not supposed to talk to the nude models? I didn't. It's also really frowned upon to request specific positions because you find drawing foreshortening quite challenging. Oh, also, I suck at drawing as it turns out. The professor wanted to give me a D. We had a chat. I told him I should be graded like I was a psych major with no talent whatsoever who did develop a number of technical improvements over the semester. I got an A. He said I should have taken debate instead, because I clearly had a talent for that. Was contacted by a recruiter and pitched a job opening that fit my description perfectly as recruiters do. I pushed back and asked to see the exact listing, so I could verify. I questioned a bit on the requirements that stated specific programming knowledge, and was ensured multiple times that, while it was on there, it wasn't the primary job function and they don't need a programmer. So, booked the interview, showed up, said hellos, and was thrown at a terminal and asked to write a pile of custom code for something. Had to politely explain that I was assured multiple times by the recruiter that this wasn't a programming position, and was told to just give it a shot anyway since you're already here. Like, you're looking for a programmer and you're so hard up that you'd waste your time interviewing someone who's just told you that they don't program at all. One of the interviewers was their lead programmer, and she was extremely petulant toward me for wasting their time. It was quite the experience. In high school I was really good at debate and aced all my government classes. However, I had to take a pottery class for an art credit. I sucked. Hardcore. My vase looked like some bees had taken crack before they built their hive. The teacher legitimately thought I was special needs. 2 years later I was working retail to help put myself through college. I ran into the teacher one day. "It is so awesome you have a job. Good for you." I felt like Kevin Malone being patronized by Holly Flax. My mother loves to tell this story to her friends. In kindergarten we were learning penmanship and my teacher was telling us how to write our alphabet, but for some reason I could not write the letters no matter how hard I tried. Since I was able to write the alphabet before, I got very frustrated and starting crying. Turns out she was showing the class how to do letters with your right hand and I was left-handed. Had an English teacher that said any stories I wrote were bad. I thought that I'd done a good job on it, so I showed it to a different English teacher who said it was brilliant but I needed to spell check it. Turns out the first teacher basically didn't read it, just saw the spelling errors. Several years later I got diagnosed with dyslexia. I used to play a lot of poker on my phone but never with real people. At one point I was up well over $1 million. One day I went to a convention and there was a charity poker game. Since a lot of time on the phone the computer gives you your options and so on, I was excruciatingly awkward and came across as a bumbling idiot who didn't know what he was doing. This wasn't intentional but it did work in my favor. I won a nice tablet that night. I was always told how bad sleeping in class was despite acing my classes, and teachers would complain to my parents about how much I slept. I felt so horrible for so long and slept early almost every day to no avail. Turns out I have narcolepsy. Playing sports growing up I would make these comically bad errors. The ball would hit me directly in the face or I would swing at a pitch way too late. Everyone gave me shit, even the coaches and parents. I kept playing because I enjoyed being active and around my friends. But I never understood why no matter how much I practiced I struggled with basic things that everyone else could do without thinking. I go to the eye doctor as an adult, and he tells me that I have a condition in one of my eyes that means I don't have binocular vision and as a result have very poor depth perception. It's physically impossible for me to track a moving object in space like everyone else. When HR at a company had me interview for a different position than I had applied for, the position they interviewed me for was one I knew nothing about, and told them as much. Despite me telling them before each round of interviews that they had made a mistake, I still had to endure a full day of people asking me questions that I had no answer to. Maybe for some it won't be a situation like the Einstein quote, but I felt like a fish trying to climb a tree. A few months ago I got the chance for an interview for an okay job. I finished all tests with almost 100% and finished the first 2 interviews quite good, and when I got to the last one they started asking me questions that had nothing to do with my profession. I was completely silent because it has nothing to do with what I studied. I think that I even looked like a fish gasping for water. After they started to make fun of me, I just walked out. I was the fish trying and failing to climb the tree, and my boss called to offer me a position swimming. That time my boss called me to tell me I sucked at my job, but followed it up by telling me I got crazy good comments about this one small part of my job. So would I like to do that full time? Did the new thing for 6 years and used it to land another even better position at the same company. Thanks for recognizing my talents, old boss. You were a bit of a shit boss, but when it mattered you really were a help. I mostly judged myself. My whole life I pressured myself to be just as smart as my dad and brother, who were phenomenal in math and engineering. My dad has an IQ of 138 and my brother always had A's and made the dean's list in post-secondary. The institution gave out entire cakes to those on the dean's list. I struggled so hard in math. I tried so hard, exponentially more than any other kid, because I felt like if I didn't get good at math, or any subject for that matter, then I wasn't smart. Always a C+B student. Because I wasn't good at something, I very much lived years feeling I was stupid. Then as I grew older I realized that my skills in art were actually worth something. My art teachers were always very impressed. Soon it progressed to people making me offers. The school's police officer even had me make him something. I had some artwork displayed at the city's airport, and when I expressed to my dad that I felt like there were no jobs for me on my degree, he said to try something else. I asked what, and he said art, which I thought was a little funny for the starving artist stereotype. In that moment, it felt like he equated my artistic skills to his intelligence and success. When I was in the Navy I used to get in fairly frequent trouble for the suggestions I made for improving operational efficiencies. As an outside contractor they were quite happy to pay me $200 an hour to say the exact same thing. I am very dyslexic. It results in me having the spelling and grammar of a middle schooler. Plus it makes me have trouble hearing similar sounding words. Letters and phonic sounds don't always connect to the idea they represent in my head. I listen to the overall idea and not the individual letters. As a result, school was a very mixed bag. I had to be very hard working to compensate for the disability. I became very good at working with people. I learned to plan ahead because I can't do things last minute, and developed a strong logic skill set. The problem is that many teachers thought I was lazy because I would describe what I thought while the other person wrote it down, etc. In college the department head of chemistry is the teacher that fully understands who I am as an academic student. He thought it was hilarious that I had the highest lab grade while the low end of the class portion. Apparently it caused heated discussions as why the only non-premmed was doing so much better than the premmed students in laboratory classes. I think he was the only teacher that appreciated that I was good at working with people and terrible at writing papers for classes. I was teased a lot in middle school, early high school for loving hockey. Would constantly get my knowledge tested. My appearance would get brought into it. Why would a fat girl like hockey? Had someone ask me if it was my passion and laugh in my face when I said yes. Jokes on 'em. I'm an officially credentialed journalist by the NHL now and have personally spoken to more players than they could dream of buying autographs from. This was basically my childhood. Because I was bad at math. I guess most children goes through this. Which is very sad. Only at uni did I realize that I didn't have to be good at everything. I had a professor, who spoke 13 languages, but couldn't count how much 5 plus 4 is. He's the best at his field. Ironically, once you get to college all the math professors have forgotten how to do simple math as well. I remember all of us checking like super basic math they are doing on the whiteboard cause they'd f***ed up 1 times in 4 but were completing these insane proofs. The time my middle school art teacher called my parents because she thought I was purposefully mocking her by making my art bad. I literally can't draw beyond a third grade level unless I am copying an object right in front me. My parents basically cussed her out after they saw how hurt I was. I'm 6'6", and I suck at basketball. Should have been 6'7". Better luck next life. When I get introduced to a new person, but I'm not part of the conversation, I just sit and wait. Then I get told, "Oh, you're really quiet." No, I just didn't want to interrupt. But when I went to a state university, they opened the freshman orientation with that quote, then said that they want to help build students' curriculum to their needs and what works with them, and then we were given very specific classes that we needed to take, several of which the professors said were weed out classes. They proceeded to judge every fish on its ability to climb. USMC judges you on your ability to run, no matter how good or bad you are at anything. If you can run fast, you are presumed better at everything. It overcomes crimes, mental retardation, and absolute stupidity. Judged the country kids in my English class for being dumb until I did an autos class. What I found incomprehensible, they could do with ease. I had become the dumb I lived in Argentina from us for a little bit as a kid. At a parent-teacher conference early in the school year, one art teacher had to break it to my parents that I might be mentally disabled because I don't respond or participate. They let her know I didn't speak any Spanish at the time. She had no idea because no one told her, and my name is Spanish and it just didn't occur to her. "Hey, you're doing computer science, right? Can you fix my PC?" My computer science degree did not train me to fix computers. I am just better at Google than my relatives. I currently work at my local McDonald's. I'm 16, and since I live in Quebec, it's a French establishment. French is my third language, but I'm still constantly treated like I'm stupid when I don't completely understand. The worst part is, I'm very eloquent in my first and second language, Bulgarian and English. Public speaking and writing are my passions, but nobody at work thinks I could possibly be intelligent because I'm being judged on my fluency in my third language. Never mind the fact that speaking 3 languages when you're in high school is more than any of them can do. Shit is frustrating. This was kind of judging as well as being judged. In my high school guitar class, me and one other girl were both really struggling. I judged her as being bad at music, unskilled, stupid, like me. Thing is, I remember an incident of my teacher, who was very technologically proficient, asking my help with typing something he'd written by hand. He was trying to read it aloud to me, but eventually I just asked him to set it down where I could see it, because it was easier and faster for me to type it. He was floored by how fast and how well, correctly I could type that way, and while many, if not most, 16-year-olds probably can now, back then it was a little less usual. Not too long after, like a week I think, the piano in the music room was, for once, left uncovered. That girl who I judged as being a fellow musical idiot sat down and started playing that piano phenomenally. I have a very visceral and vindicating memory of my guitar teacher looking between her, me, the computer, and my hands, and saying, "You know, that actually explains a lot." Once someone on Reddit started complaining about something and said I wasn't a real man for a bunch of reasons. I'm a woman, so they're not exactly wrong. One teacher was intent on holding me back the first year in school, kindergarten, elementary, age 5, because I sucked at arts and crafts. The next year they let me skip a grade cause I already knew how to read and write, which I taught myself a year prior. They just didn't test it at the time and it wasn't part of the curriculum the first year. I only expressed interest in a few things when I was a kid: cooking, making games. My parents told me they were bad careers and made me play soccer and do scouts and other things I hated. I was terrible academically all the way through the end of college, where I studied management because these things I was told I was supposed to be doing were of zero interest to me. A few years out I taught myself to code, and now I spend my life making games and cooking for friends. And I'm great at it. That quote has always rung true for me, but on top of that I really feel this. Adults Stop telling kids what they should be interested in. If a kid is interested in something you don't get, when they're an adult it's highly likely that this thing will be a marketplace with hundreds of millions of consumers and will absolutely be a career. If they were involved early, they'll be golden. Most people have a very backwards-looking view of the economy, and don't understand how totally it changes with each generation. Once at my workplace, I asked for help to open a box because I really couldn't open it. This one girl I worked with looked at me with disgust and didn't help me. She later talked shit about me and said I'm stupid. I was born with polydactyly and they cut off my 2 extra fingers and fixed a lot of stuff. I can't use all my fingers properly. By the way, you Sarah.